Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wytpod. My name is Harshit, and I'm the Director of Business Alliances at Wytlabs. We're a digital agency specializing in SaaS and e-commerce SEO. I've got Madhav Bhandari with me today. He's the head of marketing at Storylane. It's a SaaS platform enabling companies build interactive product demos in minutes with their no-code tool. So, big welcome to you, Madhav. I'm so happy to have you with me today.
Great to be here, man. Excited to chat.
Awesome. Can you tell us about your journey? You've been, B2B technology marketing space for long now. Would love to know about that, please.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so I've been in SaaS for almost 12 years. I have a relatively specific niche where I've been with early stage companies quite a bit. Companies that are, at the 500K ARR mark and you're now looking to grow to 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, like that. So it just happened mainly because I think I got into the world of startups just because I was very interested to start a company myself, but I didn't know how. So I thought, let's just join a startup. And then when I joined a startup, I was really always interested in like how, let's say you go from 0 to 1, and how do you go from 1 to 2 and 2 to 3, and like all those revenue milestones. Like, so I was trying to understand from a more business perspective. And then it was just like, and then I just started enjoying my journey. And then one thing led to the other. And yeah, that's how I've been with all my roles so far.
Okay, let's talk about Storylane. Now, I would love to understand about the product, how exactly the platform addresses specific pain point for businesses in the need of basically interactive product demos.
Yeah, so I think the whole reason this whole interactive demo software came to exist was just that when you look at when you look at any kind of sales demo that happens, it tends to be a very, I'd say like a passive engagement experience for the buyer. Usually what would happen is they will either, when a buyer comes to a website, they'll either have to like go in, either sign up for a free trial and then they'll be blocked by a credit card, right? Or sometimes they'll have to add in a lot of details. So sometimes they'll have to talk to sales, which might be a call that'll happen a week later. And then when that call happens, usually the call would be like, what, 50, 60 minutes standard demo script. That's the playbook that's been running for a lot of years, right? And usually buyers never had control in that journey. What did they want to know and all of that, right? And that's why we started seeing a lot of these PLG companies and people creating these home pages with product videos and images. But even that was, I'd say, more passive engagement. You give them a screenshot of your feature, but if let's say they want to go deeper into it, they can't. So then the whole PLG experience came in where it was like, you could have a free trial of the product and try it. But that was like, there were products that were built from the start as free, from PLG perspective. For them, that was relatively simpler. But when you think about organizations that are like sales led, which have never offered a free trial, this is an expensive experiment. They have to go to a developer and then perhaps work on a way on getting the free trial without really knowing how much of that would really turn out. So I think that's when these Storylane came to be, right? Where it was basically saying that, hey, without getting the buyer to sign up, without getting them on a sales call, without making them watch a video, give them the product experience, a very guided product experience there itself, which they can actively engage on. So it's not like a video. They can go in, explore around the features, look at everything, so that once they actually get on a sales call, they're a lot more informed. They've got the basis covered. They know what the product about is, right? So the conversations tend to become a lot more informed, a lot more engaging with sales. You also start seeing more and more conversions coming in just because you have that visibility. So that's essentially the essence of any interactive demo software like Storylane.
Gotcha. Okay, how does a no-code editor that the platform offers empower users to create personalized and tailored product demos? And I would even love to understand what kind of flexibility does it offer in the customizing the demo experience.
So the way it works is that so first of all, I'll say there are three things, right? Like, first of all, Storylane is known to be one of the easiest interactive demo platforms. So on an average, it takes just about 10 minutes to set up an interactive demo. So the way it works is you basically have a Chrome extension, you turn it on, and then you just navigate through your product. And then what we'll do is we'll start taking captures of your screen, right? And then recording all of the elements and everything. And then basically, as you're going through, let's say you go to a Salesforce and then you go to their reporting and then you go to your leads database and pipeline and everything, right? As you navigate through it, Storylane keeps taking screenshots and keeps scanning the screen, and then it's already creating a demo. And by the end of it, you have a demo ready. Now, I think the next step where it comes is you then have to guide the user, like where do they go? When they go to that next step, what will they see? So then you can have these small text pop-ups. You can have certain CTAs at specific points where, like if somebody sees reporting dashboard, usually people get very excited. You can add there like, hey, talk to sales or something. So it's more like just set up a Chrome extension and do that. And what's interesting is that because like to install this is just a simple JS embed, right? So it's not any engineer's work taking away time or anything. So if I could summarize it, it's more the tech is there, it's easy, it's less than 10 minutes, doesn't require any involvement from anybody, and it's actually free to use. So yeah.
Okay. Okay, so interesting point. Now you have a freemium version of the tool that people can sign up and check it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Now your belief, people that you're marketing have a different belief altogether. Don't you see that there's a contrary opinion? Like they don't want to offer freemium as a reason they would have that interactive demo created so that people don't ask for it. They still get to experience their product or offering firsthand. What's your opinion on that?
That's a very interesting question. So I think the free was more from that perspective that interactive demos are developing right now. It shouldn't be like cost shouldn't be a prohibitive thing for most SaaS businesses to adopt interactive demos. So that was our reasoning that, hey, that transition from your traditional standalone demo to an interactive demo should be as seamless as possible. So we reduced the time, we reduced the cost, and we said that, hey, you can set it up for free. You can have whatever unlimited sessions, all of that. It was just from that perspective. Like our overall mission is to just make the whole buying process at all SaaS companies fairly straightforward for the buyers. Okay, so we are taking the buyer's side. And that was the reason. It wasn't because people would be able to try the product in a more easier way. It was more like when we see our competitors charging 20, 30, 40K a year for these products, right? It shouldn't be. Like most decisions end at, hey, this is out of our budget. But then at Storylane, you could just sign up, try for free, set up a demo, all there. So I think it's that. But that being said, if you ever go to our homepage, you can actually see that we have a very right front and center on the homepage. We have an interactive demo of the product itself, which is a bit of a meta situation because when you have a product about interactive demos, explaining what an interactive demo is, it's really hard to explain that. So yeah, we figured out a way, but yeah, you can see that on the homepage.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk about the marketing channels that you're mainly leveraging for your traffic generation and lead generation.
Yeah, I think majorly I'd say so we basically sell to sales and marketing professionals, right? Basically, folks in SaaS companies, when you think about product marketing managers, demand gen managers, you think of account executives, SDRs, pre-solutions engineers, all of that. And so we think about these folks, high gig out. We see that they spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. We see that they tend to search a lot for their answers on Google and YouTube and all of these other places. So those have basically become our channels. So we invest very heavily on SEO. We're investing heavily on paid social. We're also investing in ads. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, because in fact your prior experience has been into the same B2B space, I would love to understand like what specific SEO ad demand gen challenges do you commonly encounter in this space and how do you address them?
Yeah, so I think the biggest challenge in our space is that it's a new category. So there is no existing search volume when you think about certain terms, right? So it's not like you can go in and yes, there might be some volume here and there, but that's not large enough to, I'd say, explain the investment that you could put in SEO, right? So when you think about a new category, I always lean on basically relying on adjacent categories to drive demand to your existing categories. So basically, when you think about all of these folks that I just mentioned, where are they perhaps hanging out? What are they searching for, right? And is there an existing demand that can be captured in another adjacent category where we could perhaps form a connection, right? So be it, for example, people looking for how to improve their sales demo skills, right? Like now that is perhaps an interesting point where you could get them in an interactive demo, or somebody looking for conversion rate optimization tips, right? Perhaps marketers there could be brought in. So that's how we do it. Like we basically lean on to adjacent category and try to capture demand from there. and build demand for this new category.
Okay, it's actually a very interesting point. And I think there are a lot of SaaS tools out there in the market who are trying to solve a very unique problem, and they might face similar challenge where there's actually the keyword that they're trying to rank doesn't even like most of the popular tool won't show you the search volume. It's maybe 10 or even 0 to 10 or even less than that. Scenario like that happens. And I've seen it in multiple cases like time tracking software, all those things. A lot of industries are getting these things on board. For them as a company, generating new content and researching on it is actually a big challenge because when they don't see volume, they feel like they're hesitant to actually put down their resources on it. That's brilliantly put that you can still go ahead, search on to other uh, places and figure out like whether it is worth it or not. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. I would really love to understand. Can you share some of the challenges that Storylane encountered and the strategies that you have employed? It could be anything around. I understand keyword was one, figuring that out and building your content strategy around it and your campaigns around it. What are the other things that you feel? And especially like in context of let's talk about marketing and user adoption.
Yeah. So I think for us, it's more how do we expand into the market the where the category hasn't penetrated. So if we could let's say, put if there are maybe I don't know a million SaaS companies out there, like I'd say maybe I don't know 50,000 SaaS companies or probably lesser would actually know about interactive demos. 950,000 would have absolutely like no clue like this kind of a technology also exists, right? So it's about how do we reach this larger market share, right? Without a pre-existing search volume, without like how do you and also when you have a category, right? It's almost like you have to educate them about the problem and you have to educate them about the solution as well. It's more like people have product videos on their homepage, right? It is what it is, right? Nobody ever thought that hey, we could have perhaps an interactive app experience within it, right? People have talked about sandbox environments and everything, but didn't really think about that. So now how and that's the biggest thing, right? So first you got to reach these people. You got to somehow make them aware that this is a problem that exists, and that usually comes with taking certain pain points. Let's say for example it's a tough market environment, and let's say sales is closing lesser deals or marketing is generally seeing lesser conversions. Maybe it's a seasonal thing or whatever, right? And you can basically take that pain point and perhaps go deeper into it, right? What could be potential reasons? And one of those reasons could be somewhere around website optimization or something, right? And then you give them an idea that, hey, perhaps this is a solution to your problem, and then going there. So for us, I think that's the thing, right? Like, how do we reach our ICPs with that problem and with that solution, and how can we get there? So there's a bunch of ways. Perhaps we could, like I said, we've got all of these channels that we could perhaps pursue. So it's just being creative about it. So even on LinkedIn and everything, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take topics which are like things that people are thinking about a lot in their jobs and how can we do better those things, and then somewhere weaving in this category into those conversations, right? Like one example is that we have this short form LinkedIn video series, right? Because nowadays nobody has the time to read a 10,000
Attention span is low.
right? So everybody loves less than a minute videos. Everybody loves snack advice and everything. So we took an interesting angle where we basically interviewed a head of marketing in their first 3 days why an interactive demo is one of their priorities, and basically went deeper into that problem and solution, why that happened, right? And now that reaches to this market where it's like there are these new heads of marketing that are joining, especially in January, where a lot of people switch roles. And you have all of these folks that are like, oh, in the first 9 days, maybe this is also something I should consider, right? So it's just these things that needs to happen. And yeah, and we need to scale this much bigger way. So that's probably like my biggest, I feel like the thing that I'm focusing on these days.
Okay. How do you understand like content marketing is a big part of what you do on a day-to-day basis? I'm sure like because you've been in this industry for so long, you are taking care of actively the technical health, all of those things. What all strategies do you employ to kind of increase authority, the the domain rating of Storylane? Like, what are the offsite strategies that you actively involve yourself and your team into?
Yeah, so honestly, we're not very concerned about all these domain rating and domain authority. Like, to be fairly honest, like that's not even like our focus right now. I think
Okay.
it's more about like how can we be the people that are showing up first to this 95% unaddressed market. So it's really just how do you lead the category from the front is when you kind of start uncovering topics that have not been discussed before. So one way to look at is that you go through your LinkedIn feed, right, and you might see that oh, there are all of these discussions happening and lots of new ideas, new topics, and everything. Right? And then you basically think from that perspective that what is not covered in these topics, right? And then you basically take that and cover it, be it in any form of, be it audio, video, some kind of an interactive content or your regular blog post and try to somehow cover that. Right? And then we have the existing distribution channel. So basically reaching out there. Right? And I feel like I generally have this, at least that this has been my learning where, you have to aim to somehow reach the same buyer from at least two or three independently different sources. So let's say if you're there and let's say you see maybe a post from me on LinkedIn, right? And then tomorrow, somewhere on a podcast with somebody else, you'll hear Storylane again, perhaps, right? And then maybe somewhere later on, sometime you're searching for something on Google and then you see a Storylane ad, right? So when you've got all these three sources, that's when it hits you into your head. I've seen this a little number of times. Why don't I check it out? And that's when the whole journey starts. That's where we're trying to be, right? How can we reach our buyers from all of these different angles? Try to become that de facto choice when it comes to interact demo. How can we be the thing? Because and this kind of also works even like when you think about any kind of brands that you see, right? So, for example, like this is a very random example, but might be relevant for people in India, which is there's a brand called Whole Truth, right? Which is they're very focused on good ingredients in a protein bar. But the reason why I know about it is because I follow them on Instagram, I have their newsletter, I follow their founder, because they just give such good advice. And then like through that, like I have that trust that whenever they release a protein powder or a protein bar or chocolate, right? Like I know that I would perhaps choose them at a grocery shelf versus something like a yoga bar, which has existed perhaps for a while. So that's the general thought process around this.
Yeah. No, but in fact, I think even you would agree. Like, in order to, for I'm sure, like you must be targeting some of the competitive keywords as well, and without that credibility, that authority, you might not be able to take the top spaces on search result. So it still facilitates. So I was just curious, are you also employing any of your budget, marketing budget into digital PR or those like the branding side of things, or is it not something that you're focusing currently?
No, so on the branding side, there's a lot of things for sure. But I would say that, so yeah, I think here's the thing. I might have a controversial take on this, but again, that's the whole point of this.
If it,
But I would say that, like, at least in my career, I've seen so many sites with a DR11, which is probably doing much better for its contextually relevant terms than a DR70 site. Okay. That's where the whole Google algorithm is going, where they, like most people have built their DRs maybe through a lot of content and some backlinks and all of that, which is great. But I think more and more with this whole AI-led era, it's a lot more about how can you get that kind of authoritativeness from a topical perspective, not from a DR or a DS score, right?
I think even the EAD update made it a bit evident that you need to be expert within your space, and that definitely facilitates.
Absolutely. And I think that definitely is the case, right? And I think more and more, no matter, I know this conversation's been going on where it's like backlinks will slowly become irrelevant, but they weren't. I think now I am actually seeing, at least observing that I think the traditional way of doing link building is not having an impact as such, right? So for example, we've had experiments in the past, which not at Storylane, but my previous companies, where it was like, we've got a page with 70 backlinks, right? And it's still not able to outrank the page that is a domain that's just focused on perhaps email marketing software, right? That topical authority is probably the most important thing that you need at this time. And surfacing insights that AI can't answer is the most important thing that needs to happen right now. So that's one of the things that I always keep telling our writers, and that's a whole change that's happening at Story in our content strategy as well. Is that we're thinking about ways where it's like, what can we do what the other 10 haven't done, right? What can we do how can we cover a topic that has not been covered like anybody else perhaps in this space, right? And I think the more and more we do that, it ultimately does impact our rankings and everything. And also one more point, because I can go on and on about this, but like another point about this is just that, like in general, the SEO strategy is also a lot more, I see it as slightly differently now, right? Like for me, things like what is and all of these keywords have become completely irrelevant, because all of that is very easily answered by AI. There is absolutely no point in kind of
The query-based keywords are obsolete.
correct. Largely top of the funnel. A lot of these are just like, I don't see a very bright future ahead for them. But where the bright future lies is in thought leadership for zero-click searches, and perhaps for searches that require that personal expertise that AI cannot have on its own. Perhaps trying out a product or a physical product or a software product, it can't have its own opinion about it because features change, all of those things change. It can't do that. So those are things that I have a high degree of confidence will continue to thrive over the next couple of years. So knowing those kind of things, it just, you have to kind of focus, put more of your budgets there. That being said, I'll also say that yes, I know. So it's not like we've just completely shunned backlinks. I think backlinks for us now are more from the perspective that if there is a contextually relevant backlink coming, we'll do everything we can to make that happen. But otherwise, it's not. For example, if let's say we are an interactive demo company and another, let's say, company called the Demo Lab comes to us, we would like, even if there are DR6 domain, we will take it. Like absolutely no. If let's say we are getting a domain that's like DR70, which is like a project management software and all of that, it's okay, sure, we can take it. But for us, like that contextually relevant is like 80% of our decision criteria.
That makes sense. Relevancy is the key. If I have to put together like there are multiple factors. In fact, we as a company judge any blog out there on multiple parameters. But definitely relevancy to our client's business is what makes the most sense. And then all the other things, DR and DAS, or TF, there are tons of them, right? That is when you look into those things, whether they are not the spam score. Another important thing. Okay, let's talk about how does Storylane engages with its user community, and how has the user feedback influenced the development and the evolution of the platforms? How do you do that? Collecting the user feedback and kind of improving that on the product side.
Yeah, so on the product side, it's fairly straightforward, where it's like so first of all, we have a whole customer success team that's working with most customers, engaging with them, always having a conversation in case they're unhappy or something. But also we have all of those things within our transactional emails where if somebody is unsatisfied or whatever, right? Like they always have the option to add their feedback, and then I think you can have it in some kind of like a voting dashboard. But I will say that from a user community perspective, like we haven't really invested in like a whole, like a community where all users can hang out. The only thing that we perhaps do is that every month we have like a customer webinar, which tends to happen, which is more, we invite all Storylane customers to come in, and then we basically give them an overview of like how we're thinking about certain topics, how we're thinking about what are perhaps some big features that might be coming in. It's relatively new. I think we're just like about a couple of webinars in, but that's the only maybe like the time where users can perhaps talk between each other and ask questions and everything. It needs to happen. It's just one of those things. Which initiative do you pick first? You got to be like at an early stage company, you just have to prioritize what works.
Yeah.
It's something we'll do, but yeah, not happening right now.
Okay. Now, in fact, your previous track record includes significant growth, revenue growth for companies like Hubs, Bonsai, which is again quite pretty brilliant, close. And I would love to understand any specific marketing strategy or campaign that kind of played a very crucial role in achieving X amount of results for you. Anything that you would like to highlight?
I don't think there's one single thing you can highlight, because first, all these three companies or all the companies, they're all different in their own way, different products, different revenue stages, right? One was perhaps a 200K ARR, another one could have been like multi-million at ARR, right? And like my observation is that what takes you from 100K to a million is very different what takes you from 1 to 2 million and what takes you from 2 to 4. So very different experiences, stages and everything, right? But I think it's more from one common theme that I've definitely seen with all of these. It's just that this might be an obvious thing now, but it wasn't obvious at least until then. It's more like I think content is marketing in today's world, and buyers have become very tech savvy in a way that where they're reading a lot of content and making decisions versus getting on a sales call or kind of leaning onto other sources. And that's where I think it has to be a content led growth strategy. So one commonality between all of these, we Hubstaff, Bonsai, Close, VFlow, all of these others, even at Storylane, it's a very content-led growth strategy. So the way I define my role, I'm not really a head of marketing. I'm a chief content officer. That's how I call myself. And we've got to adapt to where these folks are consuming content and how can we reach there in the best possible way and be helpful to them, right? So I can give you like some examples from that, right? So for example, at Hubstaff, it was really about for us, it was like when you're at 200K, right? Like you don't have enough predictability in customers and you don't have that much traction. So one way we try to get traction is that, hey, we're gonna share our startup journey transparently. So we made the radical decision where we revealed all of our revenue numbers, revealed all of our strategy, we revealed every decision we took, be it why we go for a paid plan, sorry, why we ditch our free plan and went for a free trial, or how we found our technical co-founders, all of those. And at least back then, like I'm talking like 2016, right? Then it was like, that was an interesting perspective. People love to read like transparent journey. In fact, even today, people love to read startup journeys transparently. But the mode of content has changed a little bit. But back then, people loved to read those long blog posts and everything. So we used to share that. We used to get a lot of traction through that, and then through that maybe a small percentage of those would convert to customers. But then that was at that time a big thing. It was where the predictability started, and then you can go into other channels. And even for example at Close, it was a very CEO led content strategy where it was like Stelly was the CEO and founder at Close. He had a very big personal brand because he was known as Silicon Valley's best salesperson, right? We basically used his content brand to drive the revenue. And that's probably the best approach, perhaps using that whole content led growth approach. And I think that's majorly been like I think I would say like the biggest magic trick out of the bag, if I may say that. But I think and then, and I think another observation for me was just that when you're especially in that, I don't know, 500K to 5 million ARR journey, right? One of the things I always observed is that you are looking like when you're at somewhere about the 200K, 500K mark, you have a bunch of these marketing channels. And then and we're investing heavily or like a little bit into SEO ads, affiliates, this, that. And at that point, you just got to kind of think more from a investment manager's point of view. So the way you have to think of it is that when you come in, this is like a portfolio where you have all of these stocks, right? So for example, you have SEO affiliates, all of these different stocks, right? And you have a C which might have a very different risk profile and a very different background. So someone maybe who comes from a venture-backed one is much more aggressive, can go slightly unprofitable for the short term, while you might come with a bootstrap founder who might have a very low risk appetite, wants to be very profitable, but be okay with lesser growth targets, right? So you basically tailor your portfolio based on that conversation with your CEO and based on everything you have. And then you basically try to balance it by what's the lowest risk, highest reward bet you can go for. So those are like just more general frameworks. I don't know if that answers any of your questions.
No, makes sense. And now coming to my very last question to you. Now, with the 100% remote work background, how do you leverage remote work culture to foster creativity and collaboration within your marketing teams? And what challenges have you encountered uh, basically in this context?
So collaboration, I'd say it's less, I think it's more like you just have to over communicate. Everybody has to over communicate a lot, be it for every hiring decision or be it for every like anything. We tend to use a lot of these Loom videos and audio recordings and all of that. Try to have as much async conversation as possible. And if sometimes an async conversation is taking too long, you have a get on a one-on-one or like a group call and then take decisions on your own. But I don't see that limitation in terms of creativity being limited by it. Like I definitely come from like 12 years of remote teams experience, but I have worked in offices and all, and it's I think it's just a different style. It's more, I don't think it's one or the other. And I don't think like the way to be creative and the way to collaborate kind of, when you look at office teams, a lot of them are also operating out of Slack, right? So even though they might be sitting on 2 desks away, they would still be communicating a lot. Hey, can you send me this details, this, that? And they might be using project management tools. They're using emails. Those kind of things remain the same, right? It's more about you have to be intentional to be like, just over communicate everything, right? I think that's that. And then on the creative aspects, it's more like just find time to just sit down, right? So for example, at Storylane, we have a bunch of these creative folks in the marketing team, and we basically sit down just to chat about if there's any creative campaign that we need to happen. So we have a budget to do like maybe a creative campaign every quarter, which can be a little bit more wacky, more experimental. So it just, we'll come into the call, but the call wouldn't be discussing the idea. It wouldn't be explaining our ideas, but it'll be more like the ideas were shared in like a document. We are all aware about it, but the call is more about alignment. Which one do you guys like the best? Which one do you vote on in the best and all that? Yeah, I think that's probably the best way, how we do it at least. And I think it works.
Well, thank you. This has been a wonderful experience, a wonderful chat. Thank you so much for investing your time, energy, and sharing your experiences with me. I appreciate it.
Glad to be here, man. Thank you for all the questions.